They threw a literal party when I signed those divorce papers. His billionaire family popped champagne, calling me a gold digger who finally got what she deserved. Little did they know, I was worth 3 times more than their entire empire. This is how I made them all eat their words. If you love stories where karma hits hard, smash that like button and subscribe because this one will blow your mind. My name is Nadia, and 5 years ago, I thought I had found my fairy tale. I met Jonathan Wellington at a charity gala for underprivileged children, one of those glittering affairs where Manhattan's elite pretend to care about the world beyond their penthouses. He was charming, devastatingly handsome, and when he asked me to dance, I felt like Cinderella stepping into her glass slippers. What Jonathan didn't know, what nobody in that ballroom knew, was that I had just sold my AI software company for $2.8 billion. Yes, you heard that right. Billion with a B. I was 28 years old, and I had built something that revolutionized how hospitals manage patient data. But I kept that part of my life locked away like a secret treasure, hidden under shell companies, and my maiden name, Brooks. You might wonder why someone would hide being a billionaire. Here's the thing about money that changes everything about how people see you. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not what I was worth. I wanted someone to choose Nadia, the woman, not Nadia, the bank account. So I lived modestly, drove a simple car, and let the world think I was just another professional trying to make it in the city. The Wellington family owned a shipping empire that had been passed down through 4 generations. They were old money, the kind of wealth that whispers instead of shouts, that judges you by your bloodline and your last name. Jonathan's mother, Victoria, was the matriarch of this dynasty, a woman who could freeze hell over with just one disapproving look. From the very beginning, Victoria made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her precious son. The comments started small, little digs disguised as concern. Jonathan, are you sure Nadia understands our world? Or my personal favorite, I just worry she might have different motivations than we're used to. Different motivations. As if loving her son wasn't enough. But Jonathan defended me then. He told his mother that love didn't come with a pedigree, that I made him happier than he'd ever been. Those words used to make my heart soar. How naive I was to think they would last. The cracks started showing about 2 years into our marriage. Jonathan began coming home from family dinners with a different energy, distant and cold. His father had been whispering in his ear about family legacy and suitable partnerships. Victoria escalated her campaign, calling me a social climber, a gold digger who had somehow tricked her way into their world. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Here they were, protecting their fortune from someone who could buy and sell them 3 times over. But I stayed quiet, hoping that love would be enough, that Jonathan would continue to choose our marriage over their approval. I should have known better. The final breaking point came during a family dinner when I excused myself to take a phone call. Walking back toward the dining room, I heard Victoria's voice carrying through the hallway. That woman has been nothing but trouble since day one. I don't understand what hold she has over Jonathan, but it needs to end. That woman, not Nadia, not his wife, that woman. As if my name wasn't worth speaking aloud in their precious home. That night, lying next to my husband, who had said nothing to defend me, I realized something that changed everything. I deserved better than this. I deserved a love that didn't come with conditions, a family that didn't see me as a threat to be eliminated. So I made a decision that would soon turn their world completely upside down. I filed for divorce the next morning, asking for absolutely nothing from their precious fortune. Jonathan didn't even fight it. The relief in his eyes told me everything I needed to know about what our marriage had really meant to him. And when the Wellington family threw an actual celebration party, the day our divorce was finalized, popping champagne and toasting their victory over the gold digger who had finally been defeated, they had no idea they were celebrating the biggest mistake of their lives. You want to know what it feels like to watch people celebrate your pain? Let me paint you a picture. 3 days after our divorce was finalized, Victoria Wellington threw what she called a freedom party at their estate. I'm not kidding. She actually sent out invitations with those exact words. I wasn't invited, obviously, but word travels fast in high society circles. They had champagne, they had speeches, and they had a toast to protecting the family legacy from opportunistic outsiders. Victoria gave a speech about how proud she was that they had successfully defended their fortune from someone who clearly married Jonathan for money. The cruelest part? Jonathan stood there nodding along, his weak smile confirming everything I had suspected about his true character. This was the man who once promised to love me through anything. This was the man who claimed I was his soulmate. Now he was celebrating our divorce like he'd just escaped from prison. But here's what they didn't know while they were clinking their crystal glasses together. I was sitting in my modest apartment, reading emails from Forbes, Fortune, and Bloomberg. My business acquisition was about to go public, and these journalists wanted interviews with the mysterious seller who had just shaken up the entire tech industry. For 3 years, I had operated under the radar. My company, Neural Health Systems, had been quietly revolutionizing hospital management software across the country. We had contracts with over 400 hospitals, and our AI was processing medical data for millions of patients. When Microsoft came knocking with their $2.8 billion offer, I knew it was time to step out of the shadows. Meanwhile, the Wellingtons were so convinced of their own superiority that they hired private investigators to dig into my background. Can you imagine? They spent thousands of dollars to prove what they already knew about me. The investigators found exactly what I wanted them to find: a simple apartment, a modest lifestyle, and no obvious sources of massive wealth. Victoria was so pleased with the results that she hosted another dinner party just to share the findings with her social circle. Just as we suspected, she announced to her guests, that girl was nothing but an opportunist who thought she could infiltrate our family. The laughter that followed still echoes in my mind, but not for the reasons they would expect. What they couldn't see was the empire I had built in the digital world. My investments were carefully hidden behind trusts and shell companies registered under my maiden name. My patents were filed through legal firms that specialized in protecting tech founders' identities. The Wellingtons were looking for traditional wealth, real estate, stocks, trust funds, while my billions existed in a realm they couldn't even comprehend. The investigation report actually made me laugh. It described me as financially dependent on modest employment income, and concluded that I posed no ongoing threat to the Wellington family assets. They were so thorough in their incompetence that they missed the biggest tech acquisition of the decade, happening right under their noses. Jonathan called me once during this period, his voice dripping with false concern. "Nadia," he said, "I hope you're managing okay financially. I know the divorce must be difficult for someone in your situation. Your situation." As if I were some charity case he needed to worry about. I almost told him the truth right then. I almost revealed that while he was celebrating his freedom from the gold digger was about to become the most talked about entrepreneur in America. But something held me back. Maybe it was the knowledge that the truth would be so much sweeter when it came from someone else's mouth. The Forbes article was scheduled to run in 2 days. The business world was about to discover who had been behind Neural Health Systems. And when they did, the Wellington celebration was going to turn into the Wellington devastation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do. It's simply allowing the truth to speak for itself. The Forbes article went live at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. The headline read, "The mystery billionaire behind Neural Health Systems revealed how Nadia Brooks built and sold a $2.8 billion empire while flying under the radar." By 6:15 a.m., my phone was ringing. By 7 a.m., the business world was in complete chaos. Twitter exploded with hashtags like number Nadia Rising and number Tech Queen. LinkedIn was flooded with congratulatory messages from CEOs I'd never met. The woman they had dismissed as a gold digger was suddenly being called the most brilliant entrepreneur of her generation. But the call I was waiting for came at 8:23 a.m. Jonathan's number flashed across my screen, and for the first time in months, I answered. Nadia. His voice was barely a whisper. Is it true? Is what true, Jonathan? I asked, my voice steady as steel. The Forbes article, the company, the money. He was struggling to breathe. $2.8 billion. Oh, that. I let the silence hang in the air like a blade. Yes, that's true. The sound he made wasn't quite a sob, wasn't quite a scream. It was the sound of a man watching his entire world crumble in real time. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what? That I was the gold digger your family spent 5 years protecting you from. The irony tasted sweet on my tongue. Would it have mattered, Jonathan? Would you have defended me if you knew I was worth more than your entire family fortune? He couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. He hadn't defended me when he thought I had nothing. His love had always been conditional, always dependent on his family's approval. Victoria called next. The woman who had orchestrated my humiliation for years was crying actual tears on the phone. Nadia, darling, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We never meant. Stop, I cut her off. There was no misunderstanding, Victoria. You meant every word. You celebrated when you thought you had won. You threw parties when you thought you had protected your precious fortune from the opportunistic black woman who had fooled your son. Please, we can fix this. Jonathan made a mistake. The family made a mistake. We want to make this right. Make it right? I almost laughed. Victoria, while you were celebrating your victory over me, I was fielding calls from 3 different venture capital firms who want to back my next company. While you were protecting your $900 million shipping business, I was building something worth 3 times that amount. The only mistake here was thinking that your approval meant anything to me. The desperation in her voice was intoxicating. Think about Jonathan. Think about the love you shared. The love I shared. I loved a man who let his family treat me like garbage for 5 years. I loved a man who chose their approval over my dignity. That wasn't love, Victoria. That was me accepting scraps and calling it a feast. Within hours, the society pages were buzzing with the story. The same people who had whispered about the gold digger were now scrambling to get invitations to events they thought I might attend. The charity organizations that had politely declined my modest donations were suddenly calling to discuss partnership opportunities. But the most satisfying moment came that evening. Jonathan showed up at my apartment, flowers in hand, looking like a broken man. Through the intercom, I could see him on the security camera, and for the first time in years, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Power. Not the power that comes from money, but the power that comes from knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less. The power that comes from watching people realize they underestimated the wrong person. I'm not home, I told the doorman, and I meant it in every possible way. The woman who had begged for their acceptance, who had made herself small to fit into their world. She wasn't home anymore. She was gone forever. And in her place stood someone who would never again mistake cruelbs for love. 6 months later, I stood on the stage at Lincoln Center, looking out at an audience of New York's most influential leaders. I was launching the Brooks Foundation, a billion-dollar initiative focused on providing technology access to underserved communities. The same ballroom where I had once felt like an outsider was now filled with people hanging on my every word. Education and opportunity shouldn't depend on your zip code or your last name, I told the crowd. Technology has the power to level playing fields that have been tilted for generations. The applause was thunderous, but what moved me most was seeing young faces in the audience. Kids from the very communities my foundation would serve. Kids who looked like me and now knew that dreams really could become reality. In the back of the room, I spotted a familiar figure, Marcus Chen, the head of pediatric surgery at Columbia Presbyterian, was smiling at me with genuine warmth. We had been introduced through mutual friends 3 months earlier, and our connection had been instant and real. He knew about my wealth from day one, but what he fell in love with was my passion for making a difference. When he looked at me, he saw Nadia, the woman, Nadia the visionary, Nadia, the person who made him laugh until his sides hurt. Money was just a tool we could use together to change the world. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. While I was building something meaningful with someone who valued my heart and my mind, Jonathan was spiraling. The Wellington shipping business had lost 3 major contracts after partners questioned the family's judgment. Who wants to do business with people who could so catastrophically misread the most important person in their lives? Victoria had become a cautionary tale in high society circles. The woman who had once been the queen of Manhattan's elite was now whispered about as someone who had let prejudice and arrogance destroy her family's reputation. The charity boards she had once dominated were quietly asking for her resignation. But this story isn't really about their downfall. It's about something much more important than revenge or karma or getting the last laugh. It's about the moment you stop asking for permission to take up space in your own life. For years, I had made myself smaller, quieter, less threatening, because I thought that's what love required. I had hidden my success because I believed that being authentic would make me unlovable. I had accepted disrespect because I thought that fighting back would prove their worst assumptions about me. Here's what I learned. People who are meant to be in your life will celebrate your success, not feel threatened by it. Real love doesn't ask you to dim your light so others can feel brighter. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who can't see your worth. The night of the foundation launch, as Marcus and I walked through Central Park under a canopy of stars, he asked me if I ever regretted keeping my wealth secret from Jonathan. I thought about it for a long moment before answering. No, I said finally, because hiding who I was showed me exactly who he was. And discovering my own strength was worth more than any relationship that required me to be less than myself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so fulfilling, so authentic, so aligned with your values, that the people who rejected you become irrelevant to your happiness. The Wellingtons spent years trying to protect their legacy from me, never realizing that I was building a legacy they could never touch. If my story teaches you anything, let it be this. Never let anyone convince you that you're asking for too much when all you're asking for is respect. Your worth isn't determined by who accepts you. It's determined by whether you accept yourself. And once you truly do, you'll be amazed at how the right people start showing up in your life, while the wrong ones simply fade away. Hit that subscribe button if this story reminded you of your own worth. And remember, your greatest comeback is always your next chapter.